560, The Answer.
38 at O'Hare, 39 Midway. Your next news update is at 6:30. Breaking news as it happens. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
This hourly segment is brought to you by Papa Nicholas Coffee. Papa Nicholas, great coffee, period.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Wall Street Journal editorial board opining. You can't close a modern economy for months or however long it takes to control the virus spread and not have thought about how to keep companies and individuals liquid and solvent. This, of course, was the topic of some of the Q&A between President Trump and the D.C. press corps yesterday during the coronavirus task force briefing and update, the new guidelines being promulgated at the behest of the advice and counsel the president received from the infectious disease experts at CDC. And President Trump was asked about the market after the Dow cratered 3,000 points yesterday. Good grief. He had this to say.
Best thing I can do for the stock market is we have to get through this crisis. That's what I can do. That's the best thing we can do. That's what I think about. Once this virus is gone, I think you're going to have a stock market like nobody's ever seen before.
He was also asked about, what eventually are bailouts of particular industries, most notably the airlines.
As far as the airlines are concerned, the airlines, we're going to back the airlines 100%. It's not their fault. It's nobody's fault unless you go to the original source, but it's nobody's fault. And we're going to be in a position to help the airlines very much. We've told the airlines we're going to help them.
That's great, but what about the restaurant industry, the hotel industry, the cruise line industry?
Well, the airlines very much want a lot of help, and they're being specific. $50 billion is what they advanced yesterday. But yes, right, of course, every other industry is going to queue up, including casinos.
Yes, and the Strip is going partial. They're shutting down a lot of casinos in Las Vegas today, too, come midnight. And also, think how many people are going to be applying for unemployment today who lost their jobs at 9:30 p.m. last night.
Tom Cotton, Senator from Arkansas, addressed that in part with Neil Cavuto yesterday, talking about the pending, essentially, American worker aid package that it's moving its way through Congress. One version passed the House. The Senate's working on what the House sent, but there are going to be some changes.
Yeah, Neil, I think the relief needs to be focused directly on affected workers and their families. That's one reason why I think the House bill shouldn't pass the Senate as written. It doesn't go far enough and it doesn't go fast enough. We have systems in place like the unemployment insurance system that can get checks out to affected workers immediately. We can treat them as if they're unemployed, if they've got the virus or they've been quarantined or their business has been furloughed, either at the decision of local authorities with so many restaurants and bars or the business owner, or for that matter, if they're like so many Arkansans today having to stay home from work because their child's school has closed. We need to focus on getting cash and the equivalent of cash into the hands of those workers and their families so they can buy groceries and pay the bills for the short duration that the most intense phase of this crisis will likely last in the coming weeks.
So that's on the worker side. On the employer side, the Wall Street Journal is recommending that the Fed is best placed for the role of stopping a liquidity panic and allowing that to become a solvency crash, suggesting that under Section 13.3 of its authority, the Fed can be the facility that could lend to companies hit by the economic shutdown, not merely banks and financial institutions, but all those other sectors we just described. Is that the best way to go? We'll put that to our friend Jim Iourio, CNBC contributor. Jim, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So what about that, what Tom Cotton said on the employee side effectively and what the Wall Street Journal editorial board is recommending on the employer side?
Well, okay, I'm qualified for this. And the reason I say qualified is that the Federal Reserve and monetary policy for 30 years has been very, very reactionary. And every little thing that's happened, they've lowered rates. tried to improve lending, and then never really taken the punch bowl back when the situation cleared itself. Now, this is a real thing. Now, whether you argue that the enemy we're fighting, this virus, is as serious as we think it is, that is so far beyond the point now that it's forgotten. The point now is a real live economic lockup. And I don't know if you saw futures trading last night. Last night, early in the evening, the stock futures were up 5%, limit up, and then all of a sudden, the things we're talking about, there's some talk of funding pressures, the dollar rallies, and the stock market goes to negative on the day. So obviously to see 5% swings in the overnight session is just boggling to me. But is it the right thing to do? Yeah, I think it's probably the right thing to do at this point in time.
What about Mitt Romney's proposal to give every American a one-time payment of $1,000?
Well, and theoretically, I hate those kind of things, and we did it once before. You remember our $600 when George W. Bush was president. But I do and I have a different view of it than some people do because I'm in the financial markets too, but I also have the restaurant. I see people who, and we're planning on paying some employees during the time we're shut down, but I do see a tremendous amount of people who are living paycheck to paycheck, and you want to support those people. So again, this is another one of those things that I hate myself for being for, because as a conservative, as a almost libertarian, I say that these things shouldn't be necessary, but in this situation they probably are necessary, so I'm reluctantly for it again.
Well, how many people did you have to lay off or temporarily tell them to go home? Well, hopefully we'll be back in 2 weeks, because I don't believe it. I think that this is going to go on for months.
Well, I think if it goes on for a month, our restaurant's probably a little different situation than a lot are, but a lot of them are probably hanging on by a thinner margin than people realize. And if they went on for a month and they didn't get any assistance, we would lose a tremendous amount of restaurants. So I kind of agree with you. I think it will go on a little bit more. But to answer your question, we probably have about 40 employees. We're going to really focus on carryouts, mostly because we want to employ those who definitely need employing. A lot of and we split them up. Our employees are great. We tried to split it up by some who have day jobs and are getting other sources of incomes, because we want to make this easier for people who are stressed. And so it's kind of like everybody works together kind of thing.
Going back to a macro view, what sort of medium to long-term economic damage are we doing, or are we going to experience from the combination of the virus and our response to it? Depending that it goes, assuming that it goes on at least before we get to, the downside of that flattened curve, say that's a couple of months away.
Yeah, I think that the medium-term damage is going to be relatively severe. There's a couple different factors, though, that have to be considered. And first, and this is very, very minor, how consumption is pulled forward into those things. And we've seen people spend a tremendous amount of money for what happens next. So it's a tiny little bit of a good sign from just pumping it into the system to see where it lands. So I think the medium-term effect is going to be relatively negative. The long-term effect is going to be nil. And risk assets in several months, in my opinion, are going to be the thing. Because we're not just talking about our country that's throwing money at this problem. We're talking about every central bank in the world that's throwing money at this problem. And if history repeats itself, there's kind of an escape quotient of some of that money that ends up in the U.S. markets, just because we have the best and most reliable system that's out there.
And medium term to long term, as in terms of beginning to recover, are we looking at 12 months from now, 24 months, 36 months?
That'd be 9 months. I think it's quicker than that. I think everything happens quicker now, including like stock market corrections. Think about a stock market correction that happened 25 years ago, where people had to call their broker and figure out ways to get out of things, and now everybody just presses a button. So I think the time for everything to adjust is quicker than it's ever been before. And remember, a lot of the adjustment too is just going to be a psychological adjustment of the consumer, thinking that, okay, I can go out again, I'm safe, everything's fine. So I think in this summer we're going to start to see a celebratory feel. And from the economic impact of it, I think by the time the summer's almost over into the fall, we're probably doing fine.
Do you think we're going to see coronavirus and what's happened and what will happen before we're on the other side of this fundamentally change the way that we work, as well as the era of business we're in? In other words, one piece in the Wall Street Journal by the CEO of Nomadic Learning, suggests that the traditional office was already fading into obsolescence. The coronavirus pandemic radically sped up the timeline. The new era of how we work will be people scheduling their work lives around their personal lives, not the other way around.
Well, we've seen a lot of these sorts of stresses before, and the only one thing in the past that's changed the way we do things was 9/11. Like, you can even look at the Great Recession of 2006 or 2007 and 8 and say to yourself, well, yes, it changed the way we live, but only for a short time. Will this change things? Yeah, I do think it'll change things, at least for a while. To put something in perspective, though, too. So in 1987, I was on spring break in Florida, and I remember the local news station that we were watching a show. Some national health experts were talking about the AIDS epidemic, and they were talking about spring break and all the people going on spring break. And I swear to God, they said it is estimated by whatever national health organization that 1 out of 5 people here at spring break has the AIDS virus. So again, the problem is that at the beginning of these things, we barely know anything about it. So as we learn a little more about COVID and I learn a little more about AIDS, these things faded. I do, however, think it's going to change things minor. I think that this is the biggest reaction to something I've seen in a lifetime, so I think it probably will change a little bit of the way we do things.
Now, are you sure you're remembering that correctly? Because I believe you were doing a beer bong at the time on Daytona Beach when you were taking in that news information.
That could easily have been the case.
Yeah.
So please take everything I said about that time period with a grain of salt.
All right, very good. Yes. Also, the business era. Andy Kessler, again, writing in the Journal the other day, talking about maybe we're going to see less companies go public or more go private, and less subject to the vagaries of the public market. Use venture capital and private equity as cheap debt to keep your company private longer. For one example, as well as new sectors emerge where maybe big tech recedes, and we are more in an era of biotech and healthcare and the intersection of healthcare and technology.
See, that part I don't believe. When you ask if it's going to change our behavior on a personal level, like the people, I say yes. But corporations, I can't really see that happening in any sort of big way. And keep in mind that I haven't put a ton of thought in that, too. That's the first someone's kind of thrown that at me. But it doesn't seem to me that at the corporate level, things like that are going to change all that much. So I'm not on that.
And your sort of handicapping, I mean, the circuit breakers notwithstanding, are we going to see the markets continue to get hammered until we see a decrease in cases? Is that basically the dynamic we're in?
Yeah, it's so funny. I heard a bunch of people talking on TV and they're like, we need an absolutely great headline, like a vaccine or a cure to make the markets go higher. And I don't agree with that at all. I think if we institute this shutdown, and right now the markets have priced in basically an economic lockup over the next couple of weeks. But if in 2 weeks, 3 weeks' time, we start to see a dramatic slow or the flattening of the curve that what they wanted of the disease, I think we can easily start to price in a brighter future and relatively quickly. It's so funny is that these headlines that people are looking for that are going to be a great headlines, sometimes it's just a perception of how we feel and how the market feels right at the time. So yesterday was the first clinical trial testing of a COVID vaccine. The market kind of ignored that because they know that it takes a long time to get the necessary approvals for that thing. But if all of a sudden we had bottomed and the cases started to look a little better and that headline came out, then everyone would be saying, wow, what a fabulous headline, let's buy the stock market. So I think it's a matter of the next couple of weeks. I've thought the entire time, and I've said this in tedium, is that I think mid-April is like a swinging point for this whole thing. And because I'm hoping obviously that like regular flus and colds, sunlight and fresh air obviously has a negative effect on it.
How worried are you about the integrity of the financial system, particularly as the Fed continues to move towards negative interest rates?
I'm definitely worried. I'm not an end-of-the-world guy on that sort of thing, too. I think that, the Fed has deep pockets, too. I think they've used them irresponsibly in the past, yes. So I think it's a time to use them right now. Yes, also, this is the kind of thing that monetary policy was really made for. It's unfortunate that they use it for just about everything. Everything the Fed looks at, to them, looks like a situation for them to add liquidity. Am I worried about it? Yeah, sure. At some point in time, it's not going to work. I have a hard time thinking that this is that time.
And should we treat our 401k like our face? Don't touch it? Or is it too late? I don't even want to look at my numbers.
Don't touch it now. Yeah, you don't touch it now. I mean, the point that I make to people all the time is that there should be one point in time every year where you rebalance to reflect what your risk appetite is. And nobody does that in the 10-year bull market. Everybody just thinks it's going to go forever. And that's why we get these dramatic corrections. I talked to 6 different, and I don't do a lot of, personal, investing. I'm more institutional. But I say to people, just rebalance at the end of the year. If you wanted to be 60-40 stocks to bonds, and all of a sudden after 10 years your stock portfolio has exploded, adjust back. And if it's in your 401k, you don't even get any sort of tax consequence. But people don't do that. And then all of a sudden when these corrections happen, we head to, that's why we head to the floor so quickly. But now it's not the time to try to sell it in the hole like this, and we may lose another 10%. But again, I'm not selling out of anything now.
Jim Iourio, CNBC contributor and proprietor of Branson Palatine. Carryout is available, which is good news for me because I don't cook, so I may be doing a lot of trekking up to Palatine for Jim's Burgers. Jim, thanks so much. Thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Balance of nature. Changing the world, one life at a time.
I think I've turned a corner in not having so much fatigue. That was my initial problem, was I was just tired all the time. So I think it's helping me with that. I think it's a whole lot better as a supplement than a lot of other products. Basically, you heal from the cellular level up. That's why nutrition is so important. Having whole foods is very important for health. I really think that it's been helping me overall.
Don't wait to see what getting over 10 servings of whole fruits and vegetables every day can do for you. Right now, Balance of Nature is offering free shipping and 35% off on any new preferred order of fruits and veggies. Start your journey to better health today by calling 1-800-2468-751 or by going to balanceofnature.com and make sure to receive this special radio offer by using discount code Chicago.
Text from 313. Great guest selection. Very good insight on markets and small business. Yep, that's Jim Iourio.